It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. You know, over the last 5 years, I've been talking a lot about how the document imaging channel is going to lose control of the conversation to the end users regarding print. And folks, that day is here today. There's folks outside our industry that are looking at the document imaging channel's end users. They're courting them, and they're sharing with them a different story. And unfortunately, that different story is about them. Not them, the distributor. Not them, AWS, but them, the end user. So now I want to get on my Sharp Interactive board and let's talk about the industry and let's talk about the big disruption that's coming from the new communicators to your customers. So the first thing I got to do is I got to get my Sharp Interactive board working here, and I want you to go to the very middle of this slide. There's a lot of stuff on this slide, but go to the middle of it and let's talk for a second about the end user. Ladies and gentlemen, our industry has really forgotten about the end user. Most of the things our industry does today is for the benefit of the industry. And I know that's tough to hear, but it's the truth. Overspeccing and overselling A3. Are the OEMs really doing what's beneficial to the end users? Or are they doing what's beneficial to their factories? I'll never forget the conversation I had with a senior leader inside one of the OEMs one day. And he was telling me how there's no way in the world that the OEMs can just pivot over to A4 like you want them to, Ray. It's unrealistic. They can't just stop making A3. They can't substitute A3 revenue for A4 revenue. This is just impossible. Of course, I listened to this gentleman go on and on and on. And when he was done, I said, I don't really give a shit about any of that stuff. And neither do your end users. The end users don't believe it's up to them to keep you in outdated processes. The end users will look for what's beneficial to them, and sometimes they don't even have to look. Other people will show up and tell them what's beneficial to them. That's when they take away great relationships and deliver your end users a better experience, right? So I want us all to think about the end users that we service and support today around print. And then I want us to start thinking about AWS, and I want us to start thinking about the distributors. Ingram Micro, start thinking about them. TD Synnex, Tech Data Synnex coming together, forming a $57 billion company. Ingram Micro, $47 billion distribution house. Folks, these folks are going to shake up your world in a way that you're not paying attention to. Last week I talked about AWS, so I'm gonna come over here and I want to circle AWS. AWS will do $60 billion this year. Last quarter, they did $16.1 billion, their third quarter. They're revamping their partner program. Folks, AWS is talking to your end users every day. I want to digress a little bit, but I want us to get our head around AWS and Amazon for a second. Do you realize that AWS and Amazon is really the only player in the world that communicates with your end users in both their work and personal lives? Remember that video I did where I talked about how the work and the personal life were really getting integrated? That you use the same tools in your personal life as you do in your work life? That technology is changing both of those lives and bringing those lives together? And this pandemic and the remote work and all the things that we've experienced over the last 2 years, aren't we all starting to envision how work and life is merging together through technologies? Of course it is. Amazon Web Services, through their partner program, communicates with businesses and solves businesses' problems. And guess what? Amazon.com talks to all those businesses' employees when they're in their personal life. They're communicating with end users all day long, all over the world. Think about that. Think of the power of that. When I say that others are telling your end users things that you might not want your end users to hear, AWS is one of those it's one of those big outsiders educating your customers on a better way. You know, recently, back May 4th of 2021, Amazon had a virtual conference around financial services. Well-attended conference, folks. I was looking at the agenda of this conference, and I kind of smiled when I saw this pop up. Modernize manual document workflows with AI and serverless architecture patterns. Folks, they weren't talking about DocuWare. They weren't talking about managed print services. But AWS was talking to the financial services community about what? Basically eliminating documents, living in cloud services, all the things that Amazon Web Services can bring to the marketplace. It won't be long before they have a financial services conference where they start talking about how dysfunctional print is. It won't be a managed print services conversation. It'll be a conversation about how an industry has been overspeccing and overselling end users for at least a decade. Maybe there's a better way. You see, the retail partners that are part of the AWS platform, they don't necessarily have to sell print to the end users. They just have to be able to articulate a conversation to those end users about how dysfunctional the old ways delivering print to them. And when they do that, they're going to take away your credibility. And when the dealers in the document imaging channel want to move into broader services, you can't allow the outsiders to convince your end users that they're doing something dysfunctional. Can you? Think about the financing piece of our business. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been leasing copy machines and printers for a long time. We're good at it. Most outside our industry would give us that. Boy, that industry sure understands how to finance hardware. They get it. They understand how to do pass-through dollars. They get all that. They're great at it. But now they're starting to understand that we overspec and oversell, that we prematurely upgrade leases, that we're having petitions right now to try to change the way fair market value leases are done so we can benefit more. Has nothing to do with our end users benefiting. I know some of you are going to say, oh, no, we got to upgrade our end users. We got to upgrade them. So we got to be able to buy out that machine early. Folks, I'll bet you 95% of every single deal right now that's waiting for equipment to go into the office so you can fund these leases that you've done over the last year, customers probably don't need to even change. But we didn't have a talk track around that because we never built a services platform outside of selling a piece of hardware. And we had to sell a piece of hardware to keep our engine going, to keep our OEM happy. Because we had processes that were built for the benefit of dealers and the benefit of OEMs. We didn't really have processes that were the benefit of the end user. And if we don't start paying attention to what benefits our end users, the folks on the left and the folks on the right are going to come and take away your damn relationship. I think about these distributors over here. Folks, I'm going to tell you something right now. You know, about 3.5 years ago, I predicted that either Staples or Office Depot would come into the marketplace and buy a mega dealer. We saw where Staples bought Dex. What's going to happen next is going to make that look like Staples bought a lemonade stand. These distributors are in a powerful position. They're huge. And what they're going to do is they're going to go right to the OEM and say, stop selling your products to dealers. Let us do it for you. Some of our OEMs already do this. Sharp has a fantastic relationship with TD SYNNEX. So does Lexmark. Folks, it's not going to be long before all the OEMs are going through distribution. And by the way, Amazon Web Services will be a nice place too. They're not going to want to deal with dealers. They're going to want to deal with big distribution houses that have an infrastructure that can deliver that equipment to the dealer and let the reseller go into the marketplace, sell it, supply it, and service it. That's the reality. These distribution houses, guess what happens when the OEMs say, hey, deliver all of our equipment for us? The first thing you're going to do is say, well, we can't have territories. We have resellers all over the place. We're not going to try to manage who gets what. So if you really want us to distribute your equipment, you have to do away with all these crazy territories. Guess what? The territories are going away. Because the OEMs, they're going to abide by the rules of the distributors. Because the OEMs make things to move into the market. And the way things are moving into the market from an OEM's perspective have changed drastically. They all know it. We've got the biggest supply crunch in the history of our industry, right? And a lot of it's caused by the pandemic. A lot of it's caused by the chips. But at the end of the day, we're in a big crisis. The supply chain is broken. And part of fixing that supply chain, OEMs are going to think seriously about what they can benefit from with distribution through big distribution houses. That's just a fact of life. And so as the OEMs start moving their products through distribution, how does that affect the processes of your dealership? Folks, our innovation in the document imaging channel is going to be based on process changes. It's not going to be based on another product. Over the weekend, I read an article where somebody was talking about, this is so insane. I had to respond by writing an article I put on LinkedIn. And the article I read was about how the document imaging channel is perfectly positioned to diversify because they once sold typewriters. When I read this, I was like, what in the... Actually, I used the swear word. I published an article over the weekend on LinkedIn. It's called WTF is my response. Go read the article on LinkedIn. You'll hear what I think about that analogy. It's insanity. When we moved from typewriters to copy machines, it was just about a product. The processes to run our business didn't have to change. Hell, we could have took the typewriter technician and allowed him to fix the copy machine. A little bit of training. It wasn't that complicated. The problem today, we're trying to go from print devices to IT infrastructure, to IT services, and we're going to take a copier tech and make them a server admin tech. That doesn't work. That doesn't work, my friends. Your outdated dispatch system doesn't necessarily work in an IT services deliverable. You got to modify it. You got to change it. You got to change processes. And those of you that believe we're gonna save our industry because we went from typewriters to copy machines, probably should sell your business right now. And the rest of you need to pay attention to what's on the left of my screen and what's on the right of my screen. I'm going to talk more about Ingram Micro and TD SYNNEX this week because they're doing some things that really lead me to believe that they're aligning with our OEMs right now. As I do this video, they're aligning with them. They're talking to them. They're going to make some big dynamic changes. SYNNEX went out and bought some print management tools. We'll talk a little bit about that. Our friends over at Ingram Micro, they bought an RMM company, a PSA tool, right? So let's see what they're going to do with all this stuff. But I assure you, they're going to come to market and disrupt it. They're going to disrupt the reseller footprint. They're going to disrupt the way OEMs deal with resellers, just like our friends over at AWS are. They're talking to our end users. They have armies of employees that are educating end users on technologies. And we have got to change our processes, or we will, in fact, be left behind. We will, in fact, be left behind. So tune in this week for some more on this, but everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.